John Carter walked along the narrow mountain path, his boots crunching on loose stones. The afternoon sun warmed his back as he adjusted the straps of his backpack. As a geology professor from a small university in Montana, John loved these solo trips into the wilderness. The quiet helped him think, and the rocks told stories that most people never heard. He stopped to examine an interesting rock formation when a bright light flashed across the sky. John looked up just in time to see something large and metallic, streaking through the air. It wasn't a plane or helicopter. The object moved too fast, leaving a trail of smoke and fire behind it. The crash shook the ground beneath his feet. Birds flew from trees, and a cloud of dust rose from behind a nearby ridge. John hesitated. The smart thing would be to turn around and get help, but curiosity pulled at him. What if someone was hurt? He had a first aid kit in his backpack. Just a quick look, he told himself, changing direction toward the crash site. 20 minutes later, John crouched behind a large boulder, his heart pounding in his chest. The plane wasn't a plane at all. The sleek metal craft had strange markings, and no wings. Parts of it still smoked from the crash, and a large hole had been torn in one side. But that wasn't what made John's mouth go dry. It was the three figures that had crawled from the wreckage. They stood on two legs like humans, but that's where the similarities ended. Their skin was a pale blue color with patches of what looked like scales. They had 4 arms each, and their heads were wider than human heads, with no visible ears and 3 yellow eyes. Arranged in a triangle. John watched as they checked their craft and then each other for injuries. They spoke in strange clicking sounds mixed with deep rumbles. One of them, slightly taller than the others with darker blue skin, seemed to be giving orders. John started to back away slowly. This was beyond his ability to help. He needed to get back to town and tell someone, though. Who would believe him was another question. His foot slipped on loose gravel, sending small stones tumbling down the slope. The noise wasn't loud, but in the quiet aftermath of the crash, it might as well have been a gunshot. All 3 aliens turned toward him at once. John froze. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the tallest alien raised something that looked like a gun and pointed it at John. "Do not move, Earth creature," said the alien in perfect English, though its mouth moved strangely around the words. "Step forward with your upper limbs raised." John slowly stood, hands in the air. His mind raced. They spoke English. How was that possible? As if reading his thoughts, the smaller alien to the right touched a device on its neck. "Translation matrix functioning properly, Commander Vex. The primitive understands us now." The leader, Commander Vex, gestured with his weapon. "Approach, Earth creature." John walked forward on shaky legs. "My name is John Carter. I'm a professor." "I mean no harm." The aliens looked at each other. The third alien, who had remained silent until now, made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Professor? You teach your young? What could a primitive species like yours possibly need to learn?" John stood straighter. "We might surprise you. Are you hurt? I have a first aid kit." Commander Vex studied John for a long moment. "Interesting. It offers assistance, despite being clearly outmatched." He turned to the others. "Zarax, Krell, secure the perimeter. Make sure this one is alone." The 2 aliens moved with surprising speed, despite their injuries. They circled the area, using devices to scan the surroundings. "I am alone," John said. "I was hiking when I saw your ship crash." "Ship?" Commander Vex's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "So you recognize advanced technology. Perhaps your species isn't completely primitive after all." He lowered his weapon slightly. "What else do you know?" John pointed to the sky. "You're not from Earth. You're aliens visitors from another planet." Commander Vex made that strange. Laughing sound again. Visitors. An interesting choice of words. He looked back at his damaged ship. "We are members of the Vax-Tari Confederation. I am Commander Vex, leading this scout mission." The other two aliens returned. "No other humans detected, Commander," said Zarax, the one with lighter blue skin. "Good," said Vex. He turned back to John. "Our communication array was damaged in the crash. We need to contact our main fleet." John felt a chill run through him. "Fleet? There are more of you?" Krell, the third alien, touched something on his wrist, and a holographic image appeared in the air. It showed hundreds of ships, much larger than the crashed one. "The might of the Vax-Tari Confederation," Krell said proudly. "We have conquered 17 planets. Earth will be the 18th. John's mouth went dry. "You're an invasion force." Commander Vex tilted his head. "Scout force. The invasion comes later, after we assess your planet's defenses and weaknesses." He studied John's face. "You seem concerned. Your species values its continued existence." "Most species do," John replied. "Then you will help us," Commander Vex decided. "Our ship needs specific minerals to repair the communication array. You will help us find them." John thought quickly. If they couldn't call their fleet, Earth had time. "What kind of minerals?" Zarax projected another hologram showing crystalline structures. John recognized some of them common enough minerals, but not all found in one place. "These will be hard to find," John said, an idea forming. "But I'm a geology professor. I study rocks and minerals. I might be able to help you." The three aliens looked at each other. "Convenient," said Krell suspiciously. "What is geology?" Asked Zarax. "The study of Earth's physical structure and substance," John explained. "Rocks, minerals, natural processes." Commander Vex nodded. "Then you are useful to us. You will guide us to these minerals, Professor John Carter. If you help U.S. successfully, your cooperation will be noted when the fleet arrives. If you try to mislead us, ... He raised his weapon again. John nodded slowly. "I understand." His mind was already working, thinking about the landscape, the minerals they needed, and the possibilities. These aliens were strong and had advanced technology, but they didn't know Earth. They didn't know its rocks, its terrain. And they clearly didn't know humans very well, if they thought he would help them invade his planet. "I'll need to collect some rocks as we go," John said. "To help find the minerals you need?" The aliens laughed again. "Primitive methods," said Zarax dismissively, "but permitted." John bent down and picked up a smooth, round stone. It felt good. In his hand, solid, dependable, like the beginning of a plan. A morning sun climbed over the mountains as John led the three aliens along a deer trail. Commander Vex walked directly behind him, weapon always ready. Zarax and Krell followed, their forearms carrying equipment and scanning devices. They had spent the night near the crash site, and now John was supposedly guiding them to the first mineral deposit. "How much farther, human?" Commander Vex asked. Despite his military bearing, John could hear the tiredness in his voice. "The trail gets steeper ahead," John replied, hiding his satisfaction. He had noticed during the night that the aliens seemed to struggle with Earth's gravity. It was slightly stronger than what they were used to, and their muscular bodies, while powerful, tired quickly here. "Your planet's atmosphere is inefficient," complained Krell, breathing heavily. "Too much oxygen, not enough Terralon gas." John had no idea what Terralon gas was, but filed away the information. Every weakness he discovered might help later. "Tell me about your species," John said, pausing to let them rest. He bent down and picked up a reddish rock, adding it to the growing collection in his backpack. "You said you've conquered 17 planets?" Commander Vex straightened proudly. "The Vax-Tari are the greatest warriors in the known galaxy. We are bred for combat from birth. Bred? John asked. Selected genetic traits, explained Xerax, the most technical of the three. Each generation is enhanced for specific combat abilities. I was bred for tactical analysis. Krell for endurance in hostile environments. The commander for leadership and strength. John nodded, thinking of human history. We used to think that way too, about breeding and conquering. Many human societies have moved beyond it. Commander Vex made a dismissive gesture with one of his. Lower arms. That is why you will fall. Your kind lacks the warrior spirit. John said nothing, just stooped to pick up another rock, this one with interesting crystals embedded in it. He placed it carefully in his pack. Why do you collect those? Useless stones? Asked Krell. They help me track mineral deposits, John lied smoothly. Different rocks appear near different minerals. This was partially true, but mostly he was selecting rocks for very specific properties. They continued walking for another hour. John led them through the hardest paths he could find up steep inclines, across streams, through dense brush. The aliens were strong, but they were clearly struggling with the terrain. Their combat training hadn't prepared them for Earth's wilderness. When they stopped for water by a small stream, John skipped a flat stone across the water's surface. It bounced 5 times before sinking. What purpose does that serve? Asked Xerax, watching with his 3 yellow eyes. John shrugged. It's just for fun. Humans play with rocks sometimes. The aliens exchanged looks that John couldn't read. Show me, commanded Vex, suddenly interested. John selected a flat, smooth stone and demonstrated the wrist motion. It's all in the angle and spin, he explained. Commander Vex tried with a stone John handed him. It plopped directly into the water. The commander looked offended, as if the rock had personally insulted him. John hid his smile and continued walking. Every interaction taught him more about them. They were competitive. They hated failing. And they knew nothing about simple Earth physics. As they hiked, Commander Vex explained more about the Vaxtari. Our training begins at hatching. By your Earth age of 5, we can disassemble and reassemble energy weapons. By 10, we have killed our first opponent in the training rings. Sounds harsh, John commented, stepping over a fallen tree. It creates the finest warriors in the galaxy, Vex replied. Each of us is worth 100 soldiers from lesser species. Yet here you are, crashed on our primitive planet, John said before he could stop himself. Krell moved quickly, grabbing John's arm with one of his upper limbs. Watch your words, human. Commander Vex waved him back. The professor makes a valid observation. Our current situation is ... not ideal. He fixed his 3 eyes on John. But do not mistake temporary setback for defeat. Once we contact our fleet, your world's fate is sealed. John nodded, rubbing his arm where Krell had grabbed him. Another piece of information: they were physically stronger than humans, but not overwhelmingly, so they reached a ridge overlooking a valley. The sun was high now, beating down on them. John noticed the aliens' cooling vents on their armor activating. Interesting, they didn't handle heat well. We'll find the first mineral type in that canyon, John said, pointing to a narrow cut in the landscape ahead. But we should rest during the hottest part of the day. Humans know how to manage in this heat, but you might find it challenging. The aliens looked like they wanted to argue, but their discomfort was obvious. They found shade under a large rock outcropping, and John used the opportunity to examine more stones in the area. Your species' reliance on rest is inefficient, said Xerax, watching John sort through rocks. Maybe, John replied. But we've survived on this planet for thousands of years. We've adapted. A primitive adaptation, said Krell. Our neural implants allow us to function at peak capacity, regardless of external conditions. John's ears perked up at this. Neural implants? Your brains are connected to your armor? Zarax shot Krell an annoyed look. Some information is not. For primitive species. Too late. John now knew their armor and bodies were linked somehow. He picked up a stone with high iron content and slipped it into his pocket, not his backpack. This one might be useful soon. As they rested, John planned their route to the canyon. It would force them into single file. The narrow walls would amplify sound. The loose rocks above could be triggered to fall with minimal effort. Commander Vex watched John with all three eyes. You seem deep in thought, Professor. John looked up with an innocent smile. Just planning the best route to help you find what you need. This wasn't entirely a lie. John was indeed planning. But what the aliens needed and what they wanted were two very different things. We move in 10 minutes, Vex ordered. The sooner we repair our communication array, the sooner your planet can welcome its new rulers. John nodded and stood, adjusting, his backpack full of carefully selected rocks. I'm ready when you are, he said, feeling the weight of the stones and his developing plan on his shoulders. The canyon walls rose high on both sides as John led the aliens into the narrow passage. Shadows fell across their path, bringing welcome coolness after hours in the sun. Commander Vex stayed close behind John, while Zarax and Krell followed. Several steps back, their scanning devices making soft beeping sounds. The walls contain traces of the first mineral you need, John explained, pointing to streaks of color in the rock face. The deeper we go, the more concentrated it becomes. Commander Vex nodded, his three eyes scanning the canyon. This location makes tactical sense. Defensible. Limited entry points. John smiled to himself. Yes, limited entry points and limited exit points, too. Perfect for what he had planned. As they moved deeper into the canyon, the path narrowed until they had to walk single file. John kept his eyes open for the right spot. There a section where loose rocks balanced precariously above a bend in the path. He slowed his pace, pretending to examine the rock wall. Why are we stopping? Krell demanded from the back of the line. Just checking the mineral content, John answered, reaching out to touch the canyon wall. As he did, he subtly pushed a small stone with his foot. It skittered across the path, barely noticeable, but that tiny stone dislodged a slightly larger one, which in turn moved several more. John stepped back quickly as Commander Vex shouted a warning. A small rock slide tumbled down between John and Zarax, separating the group. The rocks weren't large enough to hurt anyone, but they effectively blocked the narrow passage. Professor! Commander Vex's voice came from the other side of the rock pile. Are you responsible for this? No, John called back, making his voice sound frightened. It just happened. The canyon walls are unstable. He heard the aliens conferring on the other side. Then Commander Vex called, Zarax will stay with you. We will find another way around. Do not attempt to escape. John turned to face Zarax, who had been walking ahead of the others and was now alone with him. The alien raised his weapon. Your commander is smart, John said calmly. Splitting up makes sense in this situation. Zarax's eyes narrowed. You seem very accepting of being held at gunpoint, Professor. John shrugged. I'm still helping you find what you need, aren't I? He bent down to examine some rocks near his feet. These might be useful, may I? Zarax nodded cautiously, keeping his weapon trained on John as he picked up several stones. How long have you been a warrior? John asked, trying to sound conversational as he selected specific rocks. 27 of your Earth years, Zarax replied. I have participated in 6 planetary conquests. Impressive, John said, standing up with several rocks in his hands. On Earth, I've been teaching geology for 15 years. Not quite as exciting. As conquering planets, Zarax made a dismissive sound. Knowledge without application is useless. I wouldn't say that, John replied, subtly positioning two particular rocks in his palms. One had high iron content, the other contained quartz. Knowledge can be applied in many ways. With a quick motion, John struck the two rocks together near Zarax's head. The resulting spark was small, but the electromagnetic pulse it created was just enough to disrupt the alien's neural implants temporarily. Zarax staggered, dropping his weapon as his four hands flew to his head. His three eyes blinked rapidly, out of sync. What? What did you do? He gasped. Applied knowledge, John said, stepping back. He made no move to grab the weapon or attack the alien. Simple earth rocks creating an electromagnetic pulse. Not enough to hurt you, just enough to disrupt your neural implants temporarily. Zarax tried to steady himself against the canyon wall. Impossible ... primitive rocks cannot ... Primitive doesn't mean ineffective, John explained, still keeping his distance. Certain minerals in these rocks, when struck together at the right angle, can create a small electromagnetic field. Your highly advanced neural implants just happen to be sensitive to it. The alien's breathing was ragged as his systems attempted to reset. You planned this? John nodded. The rocks lied too. I needed to separate you from the others. Zarax looked at John with new wariness. Why not kill me when you had the chance? Take my weapon? Because I don't want to hurt you, John said simply. And I don't need weapons to stop your invasion. Before Zarax could respond, they heard Commander Vex and Krell approaching from around a bend in the canyon. John quickly moved away from Zarax and pretended to be examining the rock wall again. Zarax! Commander Vex called as they came into view. Report! Zarax hesitated, looking at John. His systems were starting to recover, but he was clearly confused by what had happened and by John's decision not to attack him when he was vulnerable. All ... all normal, Commander, Zarax finally said. The human has been compliant. Commander Vex looked suspiciously between them. You seem disoriented, Zarax. The canyon ... has unusual properties, Zarax replied. Some kind of interference with our systems. Nothing serious. John kept his expression neutral, but inside he was pleased. Zarax hadn't reported what happened. Whether from confusion, pride, or curiosity, the alien was keeping their encounter to himself. We need to continue deeper into the canyon, John said. The minerals become more concentrated ahead. Commander Vex studied John for a moment and nodded. Proceed. But be aware, Professor, if you attempt anything, your life is forfeit. Understood, John replied, leading them forward again as they walked. John noticed Zarax watching him with a mixture of suspicion and something else, perhaps respect. Good. John needed to sow confusion among them. Make them question their assumptions. About humans. The canyon widened into a small clearing where several passages branched off. John pointed to one on the left. That way leads to a cave system where we'll find the richest deposits. How do you know this without scanning equipment? Asked Krell. John held up a simple rock. Years of study. The types of rocks here tell me what's likely to be found deeper in. It's not high technology, but it works. Commander Vex consulted a device on his wrist. Our power reserves are at 60%. We should make camp here and continue in the morning. As the aliens set up their equipment, John moved around the clearing, seemingly collecting rocks for study. In reality, he was carefully placing specific stones in strategic locations, some near their communication devices, others near the cave entrance they would use tomorrow. Zarax approached him while the others were distracted. I know what you did back there, he said quietly. I don't understand why you didn't take advantage. John looked at him steadily. Because not all problems need to be solved with violence. There are other ways. Ways that won't work against the entire Vaxtari fleet, Zarax warned. John smiled slightly. We'll see. As night fell and the aliens took turns keeping watch, John lay awake, mentally reviewing his growing understanding of their weaknesses and the next stages of his plan. Tomorrow they would enter the cave system, where darkness, echoes, and mineral-rich. Walls would give him even more opportunities. One alien was already questioning his assumptions. 3 aliens with a damaged ship he could handle. But Zarax was right about one thing: stopping an entire invasion fleet would require something bigger. John closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the rocks in his backpack. Simple tools. Earth. Tools. They had worked for humans for millions of years. They would work again. Morning light barely reached the mouth of the cave as John led the 3 aliens inside. The temperature dropped immediately, and their breath formed small clouds in the cool air. Commander Vex activated a light on his armor, casting long shadows on the cave walls. Zarax and Krell did the same, their 3 eyes adjusting to the darkness. Stay close, John warned. It's easy to get lost in cave systems like this. The aliens moved cautiously, their boots echoing on the stone floor. John noticed how they squinted in the darkness. Another weakness: their vision wasn't adapted to low-light conditions. The mineral deposits should be about half a mile in. John explained, leading them deeper. There's an underground lake we'll need to go around. Commander Vex consulted a small device. Our scanners are showing increased interference. The iron content in these rocks can disrupt electronic equipment, John said, which was true. What he didn't mention was that he had placed several magnetized stones near the entrance that would gradually affect their devices the longer they stayed inside. As they ventured deeper, the cave widened into a large chamber with several tunnels branching off. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating a steady rhythm of soft, plinking sounds. The walls glittered with mineral deposits, catching the light from the alien's armor. Which way? Asked Krell, looking at the tunnel options. John pointed to the second tunnel from the right. That one leads to the underground lake. The minerals we want are embedded in the walls there. They proceeded single file through the narrow tunnel. John walked slowly, letting his hand trail along the wall, feeling for the markers he needed. There a particular rough patch of stone. He paused. What is it? Commander Vex asked from behind. Him. Just checking our direction, John said. As he moved forward again, he pressed firmly on a specific stone, dislodging it slightly. The effect wasn't immediate, which was part of John's plan. They continued walking for another 5 minutes. Before reaching the underground lake, it spread out before them, the still water reflecting their lights like a mirror. The ceiling rose high above them, lost in darkness. Impressive, admitted Zarax, looking around. The acoustics in here are amazing, John said, his voice carrying across the water. To demonstrate, he picked up a small stone and tossed it into the lake. The splash echoed loudly, bouncing off the walls. The aliens winced at the sound. Keep the noise to a minimum, ordered Commander Vex. Now, where are these minerals? John pointed to the far side of the lake. We'll have to follow the edge around. It's about 20 minutes of walking. As they began circling the lake, John noticed the first signs that his plan was working. The temperature in the cave was slowly rising as the stone he had pushed earlier had set off a chain reaction, allowing warm air from a geothermal pocket to seep into the cave system. The alien's armor began to respond, the cooling vents activating with a soft hum. Beads of moisture formed on the metal surfaces as the warm, humid air created condensation. Your planet's environments are unstable, complained Krell, adjusting something on his armor. Caves often have their own microclimates, John explained. Innocently. Temperature, humidity, air pressure, they can all change quickly. They continued around the lake, and John used the opportunity to place more stones in strategic locations, some near water, others at specific points along their path. Each one was part of a system he was creating. Halfway around the lake, Commander Vex stopped suddenly. Something is interfering with our communications. Zarax, Krell run diagnostics. The aliens tapped at panels on their armor, looking increasingly concerned. My systems are showing a 30% reduction in efficiency, reported Zarax. Some kind of electromagnetic anomaly. Mine as well, added Krell. And the cooling system is working harder than it should be. Commander Vex turned to John, suspicion clear in his 3 eyes. Is this your doing, Professor? John spread his hands. How could it be? I don't have any technology with me, just rocks and knowledge of the terrain. The commander studied him for a long moment. Continue. But be warned, if this is some primitive attempt at sabotage, you will not live to see the surface again. They proceeded around the lake, the aliens growing visibly uncomfortable as their armor continued to malfunction in small ways. The condensation was affecting their neural interfaces, and the rising temperature made them sluggish. When they reached the far side of the lake, John pointed to a wall embedded with crystals. That's one of the minerals you need. Commander Vex examined the crystals, then nodded to Krell. Extract samples. While Krell worked on removing crystal samples, John moved a few steps away, looking thoughtfully at the cave ceiling. He picked up several small stones and began placing them in a specific pattern on a flat rock. What are you doing now? Asked Zarax, watching him closely. Testing the mineral content, John replied. He arranged the stones in what looked like a random pattern, but was actually a carefully balanced system of weights. Zarax moved closer, his curiosity overcoming his suspicion. With just rocks? John nodded. Different minerals have different weights, densities, and magnetic properties. By arranging them like this, I can tell which ones will be useful for your repairs. It was complete nonsense, but delivered with such confidence that Zarax seemed to believe him. You know much for a primitive species, the alien observed. Humans have been working with stones for millions of years, John replied. We understand them in ways your scanners might miss. Commander Vex approached, looking increasingly frustrated. The mineral samples are correct, but our equipment is malfunctioning too severely to process them properly. We need to return to the ship. John stood up. There's a faster way back than the route we came in. There's a tunnel system that leads directly to the canyon floor, much closer to your ship. The commander hesitated, clearly suspicious of John's helpfulness, but the degrading condition of their equipment left him little choice. Show us, he ordered. John led them to a narrow tunnel entrance. This way. It's a bit tight in places, but it's much faster. As they entered the new tunnel, John noticed the aliens were now staying farther apart from each other, their movements less coordinated as their neural implants continued to struggle with the interference from the strategically placed rocks. Tunnel wound deeper into the mountain before beginning a gradual ascent. John paused at a junction, pretending to get his bearings, while actually checking that a key stone was still in place from his previous visit to these caves. Are you lost? Human? Growled Commander Vex. Not at all, John replied calmly. Just making sure we take the right path. They continued upward, the tunnel narrowing until they had to proceed in single file again. John led them through a series of turns, each one carefully chosen to disorient the aliens. Their technological advantages were failing them, while John's knowledge of the natural environment gave him the upper hand. At last, they reached a chamber with 3 separate exits. John stopped and turned to face the aliens. We're almost out, he said. The exit to the canyon is through there. He pointed to the middle tunnel. Commander Vex looked at the 3 openings, then back at John, his weapon raised slightly. You have been very helpful, Professor. Perhaps too helpful. John could see the commander was reaching the limits of his patience. It was time for the final phase of his plan, the most dangerous part. But first, he needed to place one last stone. Before we go, John said, bending down, there's one more thing you should know about Earth rocks. He placed a small, ordinary-looking stone in a precise spot on the chamber floor. What's that? Asked Krell. John straightened up slowly. The keystone. Keystone? Commander Vex's 3 eyes narrowed as he looked at the ordinary rock John had placed on the ground. Explain yourself, human. In architecture, a keystone is the central stone that holds an arch together, John said calmly. In nature, it works the same way. Some stones keep others in balance. Remove one, and everything changes. Krell made a dismissive sound. More primitive nonsense. Is it? John asked. He took a step back. Every rock in this cave system is connected, just like every action has a reaction. I've been placing stones in specific spots since we entered the canyon. Commander Vex raised his weapon fully now. You admit to sabotage? Not sabotage, John corrected. Problem solving without violence. You see, I've created a network of balanced stones throughout these caves. This one, he pointed to the small rock he just placed, completes the system. What system? Demanded Zarax, his hand moving to his own weapon. Instead of answering, John simply bent down and flicked the keystone with his finger. The small rock slid a few inches across the smooth cave floor. For a moment, nothing happened. The aliens looked at each other, confusion evident in their expressions. Then they heard it, a soft rumbling sound, growing louder by the second. What have you done? Shouted Commander Vex. Physics, John replied. Action and reaction. That small. Stone was holding back others, which were holding back more. Like dominoes, the rumbling grew louder. Small pebbles on the cave floor began to vibrate. Dust fell from the ceiling. We need to move, ordered the commander. Back the way we came. That way is already blocked, John said. But don't worry, no one will be hurt. I've calculated everything carefully. As if on cue, there was a loud crash from the tunnel they had entered through. Dust billowed out as rocks sealed the passage. Krell lunged toward John, but before he could reach him, another crash sounded from the left tunnel. More rocks fell, blocking that exit as well. You've trapped us all, Krell shouted. John shook his head. Not all of us. He pointed to the middle tunnel. That one leads out, just like I said. But not all together. And not just yet. The aliens stared at him in shock as they realized what was happening. The rumbling continued, rocks shifting and settling throughout the cave system. The chamber they stood in remained stable, but all 3 tunnels were now partially blocked. With precise rockfalls not enough to cause a cave-in, but enough to separate them. You have 10 minutes before the middle tunnel becomes completely blocked, John explained. But it's only wide enough for one person to crawl through at a time. And it will take about 3 minutes per person to navigate. Commander Vex aimed, his weapon directly at John's head. You will go last, after my team. That won't work, John said, not flinching. The tunnel will be completely blocked in 10 minutes. If I go last, I won't make it out, and neither will at least one of you. Then you have sealed your fate, Vex growled. Or, John continued, we can talk, right now, about your invasion and how it's not going to happen. The chamber fell silent, except for the occasional sound of settling rocks. The 3 aliens looked at each other, then back at John. You expect us to negotiate with a primitive species? Commander Vex asked, but his tone had changed. There was uncertainty there now. I expect you to recognize when you've been outmaneuvered, John replied. You came to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Instead, one unarmed human with nothing but rocks has neutralized 3 of your best warriors without firing a shot. Xerax stepped forward. Commander, we should listen. This human has demonstrated unusual capabilities. Capabilities? Krell objected. He just got lucky with some falling rocks. No, Xerax said firmly. This was planned from the beginning. The rock slide. In the canyon. The electromagnetic disruption. The temperature changes affecting our armor. And now this. He gestured around them. All done with simple stones and knowledge of the environment. Commander Vex lowered his weapon slightly. What do you propose, Professor? John smiled. Simple. You return to your ship with the mineral samples you've collected. You repair your communications array. But when you contact your fleet, you tell them that Earth is unsuitable for invasion. Lie to our superiors? Vex sounded outraged. That is treason. Is it a lie? John asked. Think about it. Your advanced technology has been consistently compromised by one human using rocks. What would happen if you faced millions of humans using our actual technology? The commander was silent, considering. Your mission was to assess Earth's suitability for conquest, John continued. Your assessment should be that we're more trouble than we're worth. Our gravity tires you. Our atmosphere is difficult for you. Our electromagnetic fields disrupt your neural implants. All facts, not lies. More rocks shifted somewhere in the distance. A reminder that time was passing. Xerax checked. A device on his wrist. 8 minutes remaining, Commander. Commander Vex stared at John, his alien face unreadable. And if we agree to this, you will show us the way out? I'll do better than that, John replied. I'll lead each of you through the tunnel myself, and then help you find the remaining minerals you need to repair your ship. No tricks, no traps. Why would you help us leave? Krell asked suspiciously. We could return with a larger force. You could, John acknowledged, but you won't. Because deep down, you know I'm right. Earth would cost you more than you'd gain. Another minute passed in tense silence. More dust fell from the ceiling. Finally, Commander Vex lowered his weapon. Completely. 7 minutes. Not enough time to force a solution. He looked at his teammates. The professor's assessment has ... not merit. Our mission was to evaluate, not to die unnecessarily. So we just give up? Krell asked incredulously. We complete our mission, Vex corrected. We assess and report accurately. That is our duty. John nodded, relief flooding through him. A wise decision, Commander. Now, let's get out of here before that tunnel collapses. He quickly explained how they would need to crawl through the partially blocked tunnel in single file. John went first to show the way, then helped each alien navigate the tight passage. Krell went next, then Xerax, with Commander Vex bringing up the rear. They emerged on a ledge overlooking the canyon just as the last rocks settled behind them, sealing the tunnel completely. The afternoon sun was bright after the darkness of the caves, and all 4 of them stood blinking in the light. You cut that very close, Professor, Commander Vex observed, brushing dust from his armor. Close enough to make the point, but with enough margin for safety, John replied. I didn't want anyone hurt. The commander studied him. In all our conquests, we've never encountered a species that could defeat us without weapons. Maybe that's why you keep looking for planets to conquer, John suggested. You measure strength only by the ability to destroy. They made their way down to the canyon floor, heading back toward the aliens' ship. As they walked, Xerax moved to walk beside John. Your strategy was impressive, the alien admitted. Using the environment itself against us. We will study this approach. John smiled. Study it, but maybe consider using it for something besides conquest. They reached the ship by nightfall. As promised, Jean helped them locate the remaining minerals they needed for repairs. By morning, Their communication array was functional. Again, as the aliens prepared to leave, Commander Vex approached John one last time. "Our report will state that Earth is unsuitable for Vaxtari occupation due to environmental incompatibility," he said formally. "This assessment is accurate, if incomplete." "Thank you," John said simply. The commander hesitated, then added, "You could have killed us in those caves. Why didn't you?" John picked up a smooth, round stone from the ground and turned it over. In his hand, "Because there's always another way. Violence is easy. Peace is harder, but better." Commander Vex nodded slowly. A strange concept, but one worth considering. The ship's engines hummed to life. John stepped back as the door sealed and the craft rose into the morning sky. He watched until it disappeared from view, a small stone, still clutched in his hand, the same kind he'd used to skip across the lake days earlier. Simple tool that had just saved the world.